Welcome back to Derry Public Radio. Reporting from the basement of the Derry Civic Center, this is C.M. Alexander with the news. Former disgraced House Representative Greg Stilson is back in the news after the release of his controversial new book, which gives tips for self-defense. The chapter in question, titled Children as Human Shields, a How-To Guide, will subsequently be removed from all future printings. You're listening to Derry Public Radio. This is Derry Public Radio. Welcome back to Derry Public Radio, a bi-weekly Stephen King Book Club podcast. I'm one of your hosts, C.M. Alexander, alongside Joshua Kahn.
Hey, everybody.
And Benjamin Graham.
What's up, constant readers?
And today we are finishing The Dead Zone, a Patreon selection by Jared Hazelwood. If you are following along, great. If not, major spoilers ahead, and we have Josh leading the discussion.
All right, a quick recap of where we left things off with Johnny Smith. Johnny Smith spent 4 years in a coma and woke up as an X-Men.
And it took 200 pages.
I was not expecting this book to be as revival-esque as it has been, in that, like, Revival was the first book I remember reading that was, we followed him from a child all the way to the end of his life. And that's not what I was expecting with this book. So I have been completely surprised by the tone.
I think maybe it's the fact that it's just about this guy's life, and the entire story is extremely low stakes until the very end.
Yes. Because we get to what I thought this book was about very early in this second half, and then it's done. It's over.
If you would have asked me before we started rereading this, just based on my memories, what is The Dead Zone about? I'd be like, oh yeah, it's a murder mystery. And it is 100% not.
Let's get to the mystery part as fast as possible.
But don't we want to cover the really, really sad sex scene?
Yes, that was what I was going to go to next.
Sex.
The section kicks off with, I'm paraphrasing the first line of this chapter, but Sarah and I finally fucked.
Yeah.
Is kind of how it kicks off.
You have a way with words.
Thank you. I'm a poet. Sarah basically shoots him a message and is like, hey, I'll be around if you want to reach out. And he's like, I don't know. Yeah, I do. Come on over. Bring your kid.
Sorry, that's just in general.
Yeah, that's
not because they had sex.
That's fair.
That was the weirdest part, because I was like, oh, she brought her kid and it's going to be
a buffer.
A buffer. And then they're like, nah, this kid can sleep through it.
They let the kid play. What I like about up until the sex scene is that there really is no rush. Like, they are just enjoying each other's company, almost pretending
they're being a family.
Yeah.
It is very tragically romantic.
Yeah.
But that's not what I'm reading this book for.
I don't know. I still have a crush on Johnny, so this goes to an issue I had because she cheated on her husband, and I want to be mad at her, but I'm not mad at her. Should I be mad?
Yeah, I feel the same way. I don't feel mad at her. I also don't want to be mad at her.
The whole situation sucks so bad. It's all a wash.
Yeah.
Like, it's bad for everyone. No one's having a good time out of all of this. And this was a special moment that, in the scheme of the book, is all about destiny. And this is like his reward for all the shit that he's about to go through for the rest of his life.
And now this makes me think of The Gunslinger. King writes some real great romantic tragedy.
Yeah.
Also, I just realized I kind of said that Sarah was just a reward for Johnny, and that is not.
I think if I'm interpreting what you meant correctly, it's that the sex scene gives a sense of weirdly wholesomeness to their relationship. Like, it feels like the reward is that he gets to complete what God damn it, CM.
We're digging ourselves in a hole.
He gets to experience part of the life he would have had this tragedy not happened. And he gets to set that part of his life aside.
He gets to put it to bed.
God damn it. CM. And they have sex in a barn.
And it's
like
very
teenagers.
Truman Show, where I feel like, and it was described more thoroughly than this, but I still feel like James Franco was telling it to me while someone else had my shoulders and was steering me away from it. And I was like, but wait,
What?
I'm supposed to watch this. And I'm just seeing curtains flutter in the breeze. That's how it felt.
I see. I do like that they spend the rest of the day. Herb comes home and they all have dinner and he plays with his air quote
God.
grandkid.
That was the biggest tragedy of it.
This day that Johnny has, it's very romantic and timeless, because they spend this warm spring day together or whatever. And his dad comes home and they have a meal together and it is like a family. And this whole day sounds like a goddamn fucking nightmare to me.
Why?
Johnny, like, this says a lot more about me than anything in the book, but such a hugely personal thing between just the two of them. And they have drug her small child and an elderly man into it.
They should have had her husband come over and he and Johnny could fight. They could get into a little tiff.
Just really bring everything together. After all this is over, they had that moment of saying, like, let's keep in touch. Or maybe we shouldn't, because it would just be too easy. And I really respected that choice, that both of them are recognizing that this is where their lives pretty much go apart from here.
It's kind of like digging through your long dead grandmother's attic and finding love letters she wrote to not your grandpa while they were married. And you read them and you're swept away in this romance. And I'm just describing, I think, the bridges of Madison. I've never seen it. I can't be sure.
I was like, this is such a specific example. This has to be a true CM experience.
Oh, we should look in CM's attic.
I would respect the shit out of my grandmas if I found out they had a secret romance.
Well, the next day, Johnny gets a package in the mail with no return address, and it's a copy of our favorite magazine, Inside View.
Okay, I thought this was hilarious because he gets it and it's this guy who's anonymous, an anonymous source, just trash talking him and basically saying the things that he said as if Johnny said them. Like, oh, Johnny's like, no, I'm just gonna pay back my medical bills and I can get a book out of this, blah, 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 just being shitty. Johnny reacted the way I would have reacted. His dad was super upset for him, though. He's like, Dad, it's okay. This means people will leave me the hell alone.
Well, stop sending me their watches.
The guy did him a favor.
It's so funny. It's like, it reminds me of the tabloid writer guy in The Dark Half, where he was like a genuine, like, Thad was like, okay, fine, and ended everything. But he was kind of a genuine threat to his career. But then this Inside View guy is like, you're not a real psychic. And Johnny's like, fucking cool. Okay.
Yeah. He's basically like, leave him alone, everybody.
Yeah.
And it was like he was trying to play a prank on him, but he doesn't know how pranks work.
So yeah, that's worked out great for him. But he gets a call soon after this from a denizen of Castle Rock. Sheriff Bannerman calls him. Sam, you looked very excited at that name.
I hate him.
Whoa.
Fuck him.
Wow.
I hate him, and I'm hanging on to it.
Whoa, that is not the reaction I was expecting.
Why?
I am still mad.
Go. Let's tell us about the Bannerman.
So before I hated him, I was into him. I thought this was going to be fun. Well, not like into him like that, but I was like, ooh, Bannerman, Castle Rock, neat. He calls Johnny, and he had received a call from Sam Wiseau.
Jesus Christ.
Telling him that he should talk to Johnny because we know that in Castle Rock there have been just a ton of murders and they're horrible. This guy's killing women. George Bannerman is at his wit's end and he's coming up for re-election too. And he's not being like that about it, but he recognizes, I stepped in after these things had started and the last guy could not find this person and I'm out of here if I can't. And I want to do a good job and I want to stay here. So had respect for him to start. Johnny is super upset and basically tells him to F off. I'm paraphrasing. If you guys want to
Yeah.
add to that, you can.
I think that sums it up.
Okay.
That's pretty accurate.
And then he calls Tommy and he gets, is that just going to be too confusing? Then he calls Dr. Wyzak and he is so angry with him. And to Sam's credit, he is so graceful in this moment.
Still the best character in the book.
Yes. He's like, I totally understand why you're mad at me and I should have contacted you and asked your permission, or at the very least told you what I had done, given you a heads up. Just apologizes, very heartfelt, but still encourages him to do it. And so he thinks about it, decides not to, and then a little girl gets murdered. Then he's like, fuck. I could have stopped that.
Yeah.
Basically Spider-Man's origin story.
Yeah.
Is this
Right.
9-year-old girl Uncle Ben?
Because he doesn't stop the little girl's murder and
Nice. Yeah.
was bitten by a radioactive spider.
Yeah, totally tracks.
I read the rest of this book.
So then he calls George back and they meet up for lunch. And it's just interesting. They're back and forth together.
They meet up at this diner halfway between Castle Rock and Pownell is where
Yeah,
he's still
I think so.
living. They kind of walk through the crime. But first I want to talk about he shakes his hand or touches his shoulder and gets the reading off of him that he has a little girl named something like Kathy and that he's going to be ripped apart by a giant dog.
That
in
would have been helpful
a
news.
little while. No, he doesn't mention that at all. Good job. Good job, Johnny. Also, we went a whole episode with Wizojo and the room jokes and didn't mark on the main character being named Johnny.
Oh my God.
Come on.
Yeah, we really missed an opportunity
We
there.
dropped the
What's
ball.
wrong with us?
What were we talking about? The diner.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, he gives him that read, and I like that Bannerman's basically like, well, if you are a fake, you're really fucking good. And lays it out for him that this has been 5 years going. The FBI hasn't been able to help. They have very limited evidence. And he reveals that 9-year-old girl who was murdered easily could have been his daughter because it's between the school and the library
Yeah.
where this happened, where the commons are.
Yeah, the commons are in like a low area, so it can't be seen from the road.
Yeah.
And he had just been waiting by these
The bleachers, where he had killed previously. So Bannerman didn't think he'd return to the scene of the crime to kill again, which is just not how that usually works. Usually, if you have a good dumping ground and you go back there to relive it, I say you, they. They. So then they get to the station and there are a bunch of reporters. And of course, they recognize Johnny and he's just trying to have no part of that. And they also meet the other police officers who are at the station.
who are definitely not going to be important later.
No. Roscoe Fisher I thought he might be pretty important.
And Frank
Maybe
Dodd.
Frank Dodd.
Well, Roscoe's asleep and Frank looks like he's been working his butt off. He looks tired and exhausted. And so they go into George's office and they're talking and they're trying to figure out how to get out of here without being seen because he initially has the envelope with the cigarette butts and the package and everything and he can't get a read on any of that and he's really disappointed. And George is being super nice still at this point about it. And this reminded me of Colorado Kid because they're talking about the tax stamp on the cigarette carton and everything.
The procedural part of this part, I had the same feeling.
Yeah, and Johnny's very good at it too. He's thinking very analytically and putting things together. So they decide they can't go out the exit because the way the door works, the alarm will go off. You can only come in that way. And so they just go out and accept the fact that the reporters are going to follow them because Johnny wants to go to the commons area where this happened.
Yeah, I love that Johnny is just like, is there a back way? And he's like, not really. And he's like, well, fuck it.
Yeah. And we should mention too, this is during like a blizzard. A blizzard is coming into town as all of this is happening. And this scene is pretty cool pretty cool, terrifying, exciting when he is at the commons area because he gets his read.
Oh yeah, so like this is where we found a bunch of the cigarette butts, and Johnny puts his hand on the bench and he starts getting feelings from a bunch of different people of people enjoying summer concerts here, and then he locks in on this guy, and Bannerman basically watches him transform and even says he sees like a smile show up on Johnny's face that he finds familiar, but he can't place why.
Mhm.
What is the deal with this trope? This king has this thing where people will channel other people and their faces will actually change. Is this supposed to be literal? Is it?
I think it's
Are
just
we just like, it's magic? Shut up.
I just think it's a better way for us to feel that in writing.
Okay.
I think he's just fucking brilliant. And he just wrote a cool way. He did it. Like, he's just a good writer.
Hey, can't argue with that.
Hey, yeah. He also, in this same channeling, suddenly channels a child who sees a man holding a stop sign and is scared the man's gonna get him.
That confused me very badly for a split second.
Because I thought the little kid was Frank. Like he was
Me too.
getting like a lot of his whole life.
Yeah.
But that's not all what's happening.
Yeah, I was like, oh, are they gonna say he's this like weird monster because he got attacked by a guy with a stop sign?
Part of this too, I can't quite remember which part. Maybe it was after we find out he kills himself.
Spoilers.
Well, like we're gonna be talking about it in 30 seconds.
Like 10 pages from now.
I was getting a lot of outsider vibes, and I almost had a thought. I'm like, oh my gosh, could you make this the outsider? Could Frank have been? But then some of the childhood stuff he did get, I'm like, no, that doesn't really work.
Yeah.
Oh, you're trying to say, what if Frank is an outsider?
What
or
if he was
Outsider.
a victim? The outsider
Oh.
framed him, and
He was
once
Cucko'd.
they go to his house, I don't think there's
no.
much of a question. And before we do, I have to say, last episode, I asked where Vera Smith fell on the bad Stephen King mothers chart, and I want to apologize to her because she does not belong on the chart at all. This woman does.
God damn. Yeah. All right. Before we get to Henrietta, Johnny gets on the stage itself. He finds the place where it happened and catches all of it. Also, very much really weirdly reading that Frank was thinking about his mom as he was raping and murdering this kid.
It's because I like Johnny as a character so much, it's really hard to read about him being taken over by the mind of a serial killer and knowing what that is like understanding how exhilarating and what he's getting out of the kills. That was disturbing.
Yeah.
Well, it's one of the scariest parts in the book. I think it was last episode. One of the things that always stuck with me was the image of him touching the coat and it being like it belonging to a madman. And he reels back because he says it feels like plunging his hand into a nest of snakes. And that image always stuck with me. And like trying to imagine what it is like to suddenly have full knowledge of the inside of a truly disturbed murderer's mind. Fucking
I wouldn't
scary.
want that.
No, absolutely.
I'd read about it. I don't want to feel it myself.
Yeah, it really makes sense that Johnny kind of ages so quickly from all of this.
Yeah. He tells Bannerman he knows who it is. It's Frank Dodd. He's even seen him in the slicker that he was attacking these women in, and that's why there was no skin, because he was wearing that raincoat. And now we're going to get to CM's feelings. So CM, take it over from here.
At first, George Bannerman is like, oh my gosh, ha 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 ha. That's, if you knew the guy, you would laugh at yourself. It cannot be him. We all love him. He's basically like a son to me. He has this weirdly overbearing, crazy mom, and he's always doing everything she wants, and that's not a red flag at all. He probably also wets the bed and tortured animals as a kid. He's just a real stand-up guy, so you have to be wrong.
He's like a son to me.
So they make their way back to the station. Johnny's trying to convince him, and he's like, well, you do some detective work, dude, and like we can figure this out. I know I am not wrong. And so he's encouraging him to look at the time cards and see where he was when all of the murders happened. And throughout this, George gets so pissed off at Johnny that he punches him, makes him bleed, busts his lip, I think. And and then apologizes. Like it says he tries to pull back at the last minute, but he still hits basically someone who's not healthy.
Oh, yeah.
And then he's like, oops, kind of sorry. And then after a little bit, and he's finally coming around to this, and Johnny's like helping him, and he's starting to sort of believe it begrudgingly. He calls him a circus freak. He is so freaking rude and inconsiderate and cold. He called him. He put him through this ordeal of having to have these experiences. He can see, and it's one of the first things that he notices, how this stuff affects Johnny, because he is very sickly. And then he tells him, well, you can go get a ride from your best friends, the reporters. He basically is going to strand him there before he comes around again. He acts very poorly. And in my opinion, like I never come back around on him. He doesn't, he gives in. They figure out that it is him. All the time cards match up. He has to call another state because he was out of town for a while. There was a murder there, so they're going to go to his house. And he's just... I mean, yeah, I know it's sad because it's like a son to you, but it's not Johnny's fault.
I hadn't thought about Bannerman much, honestly, because he's such a small part of this. The whole Frank Dodd murder storyline comes and goes so fast.
I thought this was the book.
Yeah. It might as well. It's so anticlimactic. But I hadn't thought about George Bannerman much other than it's like, oh, hey, it's that guy. He's going to be in another book. But I completely agree with you now that you've laid out your argument. And I think I know why he's not very likable. Is he's a much more realistic cop than Alan Pangborn. Alan Pangborn is a good guy. And George Bannerman is big, loud asshole who wants to cover up for this other cop who is very obviously a murderer.
Mm-hmm. I think he probably takes it personally, too, because he's taken this guy under his wing. And so if I didn't see this, what was I intentionally ignoring? And he's got to come to terms with that at some point. But instead, he punches Johnny.
He was grooming Frank to be sheriff. So they sneak out and they head over to the Dodds. And we meet Henrietta Dodd. Ben, do you want to tell us about Henrietta?
Cartoonishly grotesque.
James Franco does an amazing job of making me quickly and angrily turn my phone volume down. He is so shrill as her. It was an experience to hear it.
I can imagine the voice in my head perfectly. Yeah, she's described in just not even unflattering terms. That does a disservice to unflattery. She's like gray and sickly. I think Johnny says, I don't think I've ever seen anyone as sick as this person.
And I've looked in a mirror.
Yeah. And she is immediately saying, what the hell do you want, George Bannerman? Leave my son alone. He's upstairs asleep like a good little boy, and you need to leave. And I laughed really hard when George's response to where's your warrant is, yeah, okay, and then shoving an old woman.
She like grabs Johnny and he senses immediately she's known this whole time. He committed his first murder when he was 19, told her, and she helped him keep it quiet.
Do you think she ever took sexy photos of herself and gave them to him? Mr. Mercedes.
They burst into his room, which is locked, and it's a child's room.
Creepy.
Very upsetting. And then they go down the hall and kick in the bathroom door, and Dodd is naked except for his shiny black raincoat. He'd slit his own throat with "I confess" written on a sign in lipstick that he wore around his neck. Somehow, he knew the moment that he saw Johnny that this was it.
Interesting that he was a believer.
That makes sense to me because Frank Dodd, and this is something I was going to save to the end, but it's such a huge part of the book. I want to talk about it because I don't fully understand it. Frank Dodd, Johnny Smith, and Greg Stilson all have something in common, and it is childhood family-based trauma. Johnny less so.
Johnny has the head trauma.
Yeah, so they all have, but they all have trouble with parents. Because Johnny has, once he's awakened, his mom. Greg, we found out in the very beginning of the book that he was abused, at the very least emotionally and mentally, by his father. And then obviously Frank Dodd arguably got it the worst. But yeah, I wanted to talk to you guys. Like, they have this connection, and it feels like it's supposed to be a running theme in the book. But I couldn't figure. I was like, what are you trying to tell me, Dead Zone? Does that make sense?
You wanted it to be a little more connected?
Yeah.
I kind of see what you're saying.
Is it anything that all three of these people became who their traumatic parents wanted them to be?
Well,
maybe, or that they were destined to become. It's like a statement of like, how you're raised.
It's a statement of resiliency, because Johnny has his dad, and his mom she had mental health problems. She wasn't horrible, but he had a loving, nurturing, stable adult in his life who could help him develop resiliency. Greg and Frank, they both take this terrible situation, and some people, they get therapy and they work through it and they figure it out and they're better for it, or they help other people because they've shared that experience and that's what they're called to do now. Greg becomes a very powerful figure and uses his craziness to get ahead in life in that very terrifying way that a lot of leaders do. Frank is on the other end of the spectrum. It turns into a serial killer.
I like that the message is that Johnny is a good person because he has the support of his dad.
It's actually a trauma theory.
Except, my only problem with it is that it doesn't gain Johnny anything. At the end of the book, he ends in the same spot as Frank Dodd and Greg Stilson. But he is, to the eyes of the world, a monster.
But he sacrificed. But he made that sacrifice willingly, though.
But no one knows that. So what good does it do?
No, I disagree.
Well, that's not a great statement either.
I don't think
that's not a good argument.
A monster in the eyes, because we're just talking about the end.
I mean, yeah.
He has the
Stilson committee, is doing.
Well, and the guy who took the photo that they tried to probably kill, there are enough things that he actually did do that people will come out and say, no, Johnny did this. I think that's what the epilogue was supporting. I mean, there are always going to be people who think he's a crazy monster, but I think his sacrifice was more meaningful because he will have people who believe and know what he did.
Well, let's get to how Stilson gets on Johnny's radar in the first place. We catch up. Johnny has now moved to New Hampshire. He is moved into the home, the guest home of a rich family. He's tutoring Chuck, their son, on reading and retention because he has his anxiety makes it hard for him to retain the things that he reads.
I didn't think I was going to like Chuck. Chuck's great.
Yeah, Chuck's
just
pretty
a nice
good.
Kid.
And we find out that in his spare time, Johnny's made a habit of, it's an election year. He's going around and meeting all the candidates and shaking their hands. I love that he makes a point that he doesn't get anything from most of them because politicians have become so disconnected from their handshake meaning anything.
Wow.
That it's robotic.
That's an interesting concept for his powers.
Yeah, how he compares it to it feels like shaking their hand, that their personality is covered by a thick layer of lucite. Yeah. He can just kind of see through it, but it's fake and blurry. It's cool.
But the only two people he can get a read from are Jimmy Carter and Greg Stilson. That was a fun little throwaway scene for him to meet Jimmy Carter and be like, hey, you're going to win. And he's like, fucking hope so. And then he just moves on.
This is also very, very, we talked about it the first episode too, but much more 11/22/63 vibey too.
Yes. This part is where it really gets into that. Chuck's dad, Roger, sits down with Johnny, gives him a bonus for doing such a great job. And then there's a quote here I just wanted to read that I thought was great because Johnny's trying to not take this money. and he says, you're going to take it because you did what you said you would do, and I do the same. 95% of people are inert, 1% saints, 1% assholes, and 2% people who do what they say they'll do. I thought that was awesome.
that.
Yeah.
And as they're talking, Greg Stilson comes up on the news, and Roger's like, I've been watching this guy. This shit's insane. Check it out. And he's making a run as an independent for a seat in the House of Representatives. And the crowd is going apeshit for him. And I just want to go over Greg Stilson's platform that he's running on. Not the platform that he's physically bull charging on back and forth like an insane person in a hard hat. Great stuff. Stilson's platform is to drain the swamp, kick out philanderers, send pollution to space in 6 months, infinite gas and oil, and hot dogs. I mean, he's got a lot going for him.
After Ben drawing parallels between this book and recent real life, I was traumatized reading about this, honestly.
I was going to say, I don't know about you guys, but this part was extremely difficult for me to read.
Yeah.
It stressed me out to no end. Just the way that they describe Stilson's rallies of his thugs beating up people in the crowd, people getting hurt. It sucks. It is difficult.
I tweeted at Stephen King that I said I'm reading Dead Zone for the first time, and Greg Stilson's giving me real 2016 election vibes. You're less of a writer, more of a prophet. Can we talk about The Laughing Tiger, which sounds like the most kick-ass game of tag ever? It's the game that Go Fat, the groundskeeper who's getting his citizenship.
Oh, yes.
The Mellow Tiger is the bar. Is that what you were thinking of?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Johnny is working for this family, and one of the other workers is Vietnamese landscaper, gardener, whatever, who is currently working on taking his citizenship tests. And he tells Johnny that this Greg Stilson is going to be in town or nearby campaigning, and that his whole class is going to go and see him talk. And Johnny asks this guy, what do you think about Greg Stilson? And the guy's like, oh, that guy is a lunatic. He's crazy. And he tells about this game that he used to play back in Vietnam called the Dancing Tiger.
Laughing Tiger.
The Laughing Tiger. My mistake.
Mellow Tiger.
Mellow Tiger. That, yeah, basically just sounded like tag, but menacing.
Yeah, whoever's the tiger gets to like chase down and like pretend to maul them, I guess.
Yeah, basically he's just like, oh, I'm from Vietnam. I've lived through the war. I am here in this book to represent people that have seen demagogues or whatever. And this Stilson guy is dangerous.
Was there more to that?
Was
that later?
Later on,
later.
he tells him to just kill him.
Okay, that's
That
the
is
story I
something.
kept thinking you were talking about, and I'm like, did I misinterpret
the man-eating tiger
Did
is
I
later.
misinterpret the man-eating? Like, was that the tag game? And I just
No.
didn't get the
it's,
metaphor.
The Laughing Tiger is the game. Then he later tells about the man-eating tiger, and then Johnny kind of marries them in his mind. Is kind of how that goes. So Johnny doesn't plan on going to see Stilson. He's like, no, I'm going to drive the other direction. Still winds up in the town and somehow winds up at the very front of the stage, shakes Greg Stilson's hand, and gets the most powerful flash he has ever gotten. He sees Stilson with less hair and more office because he's taking oath to become president of the United States and then ending the world.
And it's interesting too because it's through like this bluish and yellow haze.
The filter.
Yeah, the filter.
This is a good part. So Josh, now that we get to this part where he's seeing Greg Stilson's future, I want to know what you thought the blue and yellow filter was. But first I had another, I want to jump back and ask you who you thought the Castle Rock Strangler was.
The second Frank Dodd's name was mentioned, I remembered.
You remember? I did not think this the first time I read through, But having known the answer and reading it the second time, they set up Greg to be the strangler.
Yeah.
Pretty bad. I didn't know if that was just me imagining
because
things.
we get things from Greg's perspective and we see he's a psychopath.
Okay.
It's a red herring.
I just wanted to know. That was something I kept saying last. It's like, there's so much I can't ask you. I just wanted to ask you that. I couldn't ask you last week. Do you think Greg Stilson's the killer? Because you're wrong.
I want an entire book about the Castle Rock Strangler and Johnny finally, like the last ditch effort is bringing in the psychic.
Maybe with a more likable protagonist than George Bannerman leading the...
Like Alan.
Yeah. But what was the actual question?
Oh, about the filter.
God, I'm seriously embarrassed to give my answer. Because I thought it was the dead zone. That's where he can't quite see things just right. He has a problem with seeing streets and locations. So I thought that he just couldn't tell where he was. And that, God damn it.
That's adorable.
Like the Oval Office has like blue carpet. And see, it's stupid. But I was like, oh, there's something blocking it. It's because it's location related.
Do you want me to make you feel better?
Yeah.
Because I have read this before, but I didn't remember a lot of specifics. I read it probably when I was a teenager. I thought that it was a reference like to the tiger stripes, and it was like yellow and maybe blue were the eyes. And because he had been told that story about fighting the tiger, that was just like a cue to him that he should kill him.
God,
which doesn't make sense either.
I think that's a better interpretation than...
It's a stretch. Here's something. Now, maybe I'll save it for when we actually find out what the filter is. Because I remembered what it was, kind of.
This intensity makes Johnny black out. He comes to and gets the 3rd degree from a local sheriff and an FBI agent.
He comes to, like, he hits the ground. He comes to in jail. Although he's not locked up, technically. But this is weird.
Yeah, he's getting the 3rd degree from this FBI agent, and he wisely keeps his information to himself and pretends like it was no big deal. This FBI agent is investigating Stilson, and later we find out he gets blown up.
Yeah, which at that point I was like, oh, I'm glad he didn't tell him, because I wanted him to tell him and I wanted them to team up and I wanted it to be, like a detective.
Yeah, they watch the results come in. Stilson wins the election. We find out Herb's getting remarried. Very exciting for everybody. It's a beautiful wedding. There's dancing, there's toasts, and talk of would you kill Hitler? All classic wedding games.
Oh God, I'm so sorry that all I talk about in this book is other Stephen King work that reminds me of. But this reminds me of Dolan's Cadillac when he goes to his mathematician friend and he's like, if I was writing a book about burying a giant spacecraft. No?
I swear to God, I thought you were going to bring up 11/22/63 again. This seems like the most perfect part to bring up 11/22/63.
And I do get what you're saying, because it is like him being like,
I'm writing a book
smooth,
about
real
if
slide.
you could kill Hitler, go back in time, would you do it?
Yeah, I get both, because I did think of
11/22/63.
I can never ever remember the
dates
name
are
of that book.
hard. All the while, so Johnny he knows he needs to do something. He's really just kind of looking for confirmation from people. And there are some interesting discussions about it's...
Yeah, we find out his friend / student's dad would join the Nazis.
Yeah.
Cool.
Try to fix it from the inside.
Yeah. That's... I know it's a fun hypothetical question, but you found the one wrong answer. If you could go back in time, would you kill Hitler? No, I would be Richard, the reasonable Nazi. What are you talking about? You fucking asshole.
I want to hear the theme song for the sitcom.
I don't.
Richard, the reasonable Nazi. Johnny's trying to decipher the vision because he's never been able to shake it. He hears the screams of the dying, the smell of the dead, and always the laughing tiger. That is clear he has that feeling. Mm-hmm. And then we get an entire chapter, the most boring chapter I've ever read in my entire life, which is a chapter of just Greg, all of the research that Johnny has done on Greg, because he's now obsessed with Greg.
If anybody grew up in a religious household or is still religious and you've had to or read of your own volition the Bible, this part is like the begets.
All right.
This person begets that
Yeah, this person, they're the son and daughter of this person. I don't know how you be a son and daughter, but
I liked this
You did?
part.
Really?
Yeah. I always like more information on our villains.
Sure.
I think they're just fascinating, obviously in a really shitty way because this guy sucks. And a lot of this is political machinations, which is not the most exciting thing to read about. I don't know. I found it interesting that as he's reading and becoming obsessed with this guy, he's getting really afraid of Greg Stilson. And we're supposed to think, oh my God, what a crazy guy this is, because he is proposing what is in the year of our Lord 2021, fairly middling Republican beliefs. I don't know. I just found it interesting seeing the rise of this guy who we have seen kick a dog to death.
Mhm.
What's your favorite Greg Stilson story from this chapter, Ben? We all have a favorite Greg Stilson story.
I liked how he created the Great Lakes with his giant boots. My favorite character is his best friend, Babe the Big Blue Ox.
Yep.
No, I do like
Great.
his backstory is crazy.
It's wild. There's so many crazy stories in this.
The best part is he was a rainmaker. I love
Yeah, that
that
was
part.
That was the best part of this.
He tells at 19 years old, heading out into the world and going to this town and saying, hey, all you farmers are gathering up witch doctors for some reason to bring the rain. Well, I'll do it. I'm Christian.
and you don't have to pay me until I deliver on my promise.
Yeah. And the image of him being driven around the town on the back of a flatbed truck, that's compelling.
That is my favorite of all of the crimes that he's committed. Because I just love that it rains, they pay him $17 because they're like, it was going to rain anyway. He takes that $17, buys an ad in the paper telling the whole town how these guys fucked him, and then says, don't worry about it. I don't need money. But if you want to send money, send it to this address. And then he gets them to donate a bunch of money. Then the cattlemen hire thugs to go attack him. The thugs lose their pants and have brass knuckles shoved up their asses.
Oh my God, I
Ew.
forgot about that part.
Yeah, that was wild. And then the cattlemen send him $700. So he originally got paid $17 and turned it into about $1,000, if not more.
There's a different book where Greg Stilson's the hero.
The brass knuckles up the ass was definitely
It's a
Heroic
darker
moment.
book.
It was a
I'll
real
say that.
it was a real turning point. Happier note, Chuck graduated, guys.
Yay.
Yay.
And he's
He can-
gonna have
he
a
can
great
read.
he's gonna have a great graduation party with everybody in town
He's
also
just on
having a graduation.
fire.
Fuck.
Pretty good.
That's
Nice.
great. That's great. Everybody in this town goes to this steakhouse for graduation dinner.
It took me so long
Oh, what?
to remember that this scene happened.
This is like the Strangler thing. It's these two storylines in this book are like gems that you could have easily had more of, or they could have been their separate thing or short story. But he has a vision of almost all of the graduating class, because the steakhouse is going to get struck by lightning and it's going to burn down, and they're not going to be able to get out, most of them. And Chuck is going to be one of them who dies.
Yeah, and the whole, all because the guy that owns a steakhouse didn't buy lightning rods 200 pages ago.
I liked, though, that he has this vision and he has it very loudly in front of everybody. And so people get freaked out, but Chuck and his dad are like, hey, are you okay? They're showing genuine concern and caring for his well-being. They're not like, you're ruining our fancy rich party. And so they get him calmed down and he tells them what's up. They all know about him already, but everybody kind of ignores it because they're just focused on what he's doing, which is teaching, and he's really good at it. And they decide to try to talk to this guy. And he ignores them. He's like, they've already put down a deposit and they're going to bring in revenue. I am not canceling this because of this nut job. And later the dad's like, I should have just bought him out of the deposit and everything.
If I'd paid him $3,000 to shut down for the night, that would have been $37 a life.
Yeah, because he doesn't do that. They go home and they decide that they're going to throw a competing party at their house and invite the whole class. And so some people choose to go to that and some people choose to go to the steakhouse. And it's a very tense and interesting scene where they're playing cards upstairs, the adults, and they're listening to the radio and they're listening to the thunder outside, and nobody believes him until it, of course, comes on the radio and a lot of people died. But not as many as would have because there are a bunch of kids in the basement having fun.
The tension of this scene, because you obviously know what's going to happen with Johnny, and him just like the dad of this family is humoring him, but just having to be in this room knowing the dread of it. You know a lot of people are about to die and there's nothing you can do about it.
And it's crazy the level of humoring he does for Johnny because, I mean, that just shows you how much goodwill Johnny has earned and how much they value what he's done for their family because he doesn't believe him. And so for a guy with kind of his personality and beliefs to be willing to go that far was kind of amazing.
Well, it also helps that Chuck is so on board. That I think helps sways Roger over a little bit.
Yeah.
After this incident, he leaves. He ducks out and he leaves the family and heads back to Maine. And the next chapter is a series of letters that he's being sent. One of the letters is from Roger. He has paid off all of the medical bills that Johnny owed. And he said, this isn't a guilty conscience so much as it is just doing what I can because I could have done more, and I want to. This is a thank you. You saved my son's life, and you saved a lot of lives. So either cash this check, or I'm gonna keep mailing you this check.
and it's also the only way he can look at himself because he feels terrible.
In the meantime, Johnny's just trying to decide. He is racked with guilt over going back and forth of what he could have done. Could he have driven his car into the building? Could he have burned down Kathy's himself while it was empty? And trying to decide what consequences are worth what action.
Which leads us to his ultimate decision with Stilson. So, I mean, I understand why this story is in there. I would have liked more of it.
I do agree. And that's why I think after this, the big takeaway I'm taking from this book is I really want to go back and rewatch the Dead Zone TV show.
This does make sense why I always wondered why Dead Zone was adapted into a TV show. And reading this book, it makes perfect sense.
It has so much, the idea of Johnny's powers, there's so much you can do with it. Yeah, I do agree. With CM that I just wish there were more stories like this.
He runs through all of his options, and it all comes down to the only way to stop Stilson is to kill him. He realizes history will remember him as a monster. He accepts that, and he buys a gun, a large attaché case, and a train ticket to New York City.
Okay.
That's how if you're taking the train, you have to say it that way.
I thought of you every time that he talked about his case.
It wasn't a valise. I'm not interested.
Isn't it the same thing? What's the difference?
It's not the same name. And it's the name.
Okay.
I'm a brand whore. He gets to New York, takes a bus to New Hampshire, and Johnny meets the weirdest bartender who has a dog that he wants to kill someone. Very strange. What did you guys think of this interaction? This is where Johnny is. He's trying to find out where Stilson's going to be because he's making a circuit of speeches. So what did you guys think of this interaction?
I liked this entire section of him more or less doing the mental work of, do I do this or not? And at this point, when he goes to this bar, he's decided like it's done. But as he goes through each step, this is the section, I love this chapter because each step it is told through the people he's interacting with and how they remember him later.
Mhm.
So it's him buying this gun and walking out, and the guy selling him the gun says he wouldn't see him again until he saw him in the Arizona sun or whatever. Some lady, I didn't see him again till after the event, all that. I like thinking about it from O'Donnell's perspective. It's such a strange interaction that it would stick out in your memory.
Well, I thought it was interesting, Johnny talking to somebody who is a vehement Stillson supporter. And I don't know the reason I just can't put it into words, like what I was hoping from that scene. Johnny finds out he's going to be in Jackson this weekend, and keeps going back and forth like, well, if I don't get him in Jackson, I can get him next week in this city or next week in this city. But he knows that he's just saying that. He needs to do it. He goes back to his hotel. He writes a bunch of letters.
We should talk about quickly why he needs to do it, because he finds out he's dying. He has a tumor.
Yes.
So he was thinking initially, I can just get him before he starts World War III, but now he has to do it before he dies himself.
Yeah, everybody, they see his bloodshot eyes, and he has a limp and things now. Like, it's getting worse. So Johnny gets to Jackson a day before Stillson, and he scopes out the town hall, pretending to be a photographer.
A very bad one.
Little did he know, an aspiring photographer would be there taking a driver's test, which was... I did not think that interaction was going to be so important.
I didn't. I thought it was just another, king thing.
Yeah,
That's in there.
Yeah.
Just important.
Oh, there's a weird guy here.
I like, he's like, what's your F stop? And he's like, what is an
Fuck
F
is
stop?
Yeah, that was funny because he's put there to be kind of like is
Almost like
Johnny
a
gonna
thwart.
get caught?
Yeah.
Because Johnny's there with a camera with no film in it. He just like
And
got
he doesn't
an
know
empty,
anything about cameras.
doesn't know anything. So this kid's like, yeah, what kind of camera is that? What's F stop? What kind of? And he's like, I
The
don't know.
usual F stop.
Yeah, but also
Yeah, the normal one.
Who cares? What's gonna happen if he's like, I was pretending.
And all he has to do is say, "Oh, I changed the settings based on the environment and lighting
Yeah.
that's available."
You couldn't do that back then. It's the late 70s.
Oh my god!
You get what you get in the 70s. That was the 70s motto, right?
I don't know.
All
I
right.
wasn't alive yet.
So Johnny mails the letters at 4 a.m. as he makes his way sneaking across to town hall. He breaks in and finds a spot up in the gallery that overlooks where the speech is going to be. He survives grueling torture by karaoke sound check, and he tries his best to stay still and doze off even a little bit as he now just has to wait.
Some of the writing in this section as he's walking and then waiting is so dark and atmospheric. I like when he's walking, he hasn't reached it. It's 4 a.m. and he says he feels dark and somehow holy, but he stops thinking this because this isn't holy work.
He is very upset with the fact that he has concluded that the only thing he can do is murder, because he's not into that.
Yeah, you feel how miserable he is every second of this last little section.
As he's waiting in this balcony overlooking where Stillson's going to have this rally, the wood stove in this building is off overnight, and there's a line, paraphrasing, that says he could feel the cold seeping into his clothes and then into his bones. A preview of the grave or something like that. And it's like, oh, it's not going to end well.
Not a happy ending we're getting towards. At 9 a.m., Sonny Elliman and his gang of thugs show up to do a security check.
Yeah, or kind of.
Or kind of,
Yeah.
because
Fucking Bulk and Skull over
Yeah.
here doing a great job.
I was like freaking out because like he sends Moochie upstairs to check. Moochie opens the door and is like, all right, it's good, and then closes it and leaves.
Yeah.
Johnny didn't have to do anything, but him freaking out the whole time about having nowhere to hide was pretty intense. The moment's arrived. Greg Stillson is in the building. The room is full.
Johnny decides to take his shot, and he's lining it up, and I don't quite remember if he gets a shot off before or after he's spotted by someone.
After. People
Okay.
see, he stands up and people immediately start screaming.
Yeah. And so he's trying to get Greg, and Greg is, at first he's just standing there, and Sonny's like, "Get down, you idiot." and so he starts moving, and his henchmen are firing at Johnny. They hit him, fatal gunshot wound, and he goes down. And there's a moment where he's berating himself. He's like, just like, come on, man, just hit him. You
Literally,
can't do
like,
this.
you're doing a great job at killing this guy.
Yeah, it was very stressful to read about it because it seemed like he was not going to get him. But what I liked is that Greg Stilson does the ultimate bad guy thing that he fucks up in such a way that you wish all the shitty people in the world would publicly fuck up. And he grabs this woman's baby out of her hands and uses it as cover so Johnny doesn't shoot him.
Well, it's not a baby. It's a child. Like, it's an adolescent.
A baby would not be a good
A baby
body
would be a terrible
shield.
shield.
It's very small.
Okay, a kid.
Yeah, well, the reason I make the distinction is because the part that haunted me about this, I turned to my wife as I was reading this, and I said, babe, for the sake of argument, if you were to grab a child to use them as a human shield, how would you grab them? And she looked at me like I was an insane person, as she often does, and said, under the armpits, I guess? And I said, you'd think. In the book I'm reading, this man is holding a child by the neck and crotch lengthwise as a human shield. That's like the imagery.
I think he's holding it upright.
I don't know,
I
man.
don't think he's
I think
holding
he's holding it
sideways.
lengthwise.
I feel like it's
I think he's
probably-
holding it lengthwise.
I feel like he's maximizing
I see
the
it laterally.
volume, the mass of this kid. Okay, so anyway.
It's like carrying a heavy box. You're supposed to lift it by one corner and then the other.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
But just the idea of it just neck and crotch is such a brutal way. It is an inhumane way to hold a human.
This is just like you thinking Tadeusz Lemke Thinner hops away giggling when he curses people.
That is not because the facts of the text say neck and crotch. I just had the orientation different than you guys. But the fact remains, that's a terrible way to hold a person.
Maybe, no, it's not though. If you don't want your human shield to struggle away from you. If you got me by the armpits and I'm a human shield, I'm fighting. If you have me by the balls, maybe I'm a little calmer because I'm afraid.
I'm just saying, like, imagine seeing this.
Yeah.
How gruesome it is to, like, he's not Lion Kinging this child up. He
I
is,
don't think it would matter. He's holding it
Still.
up in front of a rifle.
that is true.
And this is where our guy, who we thought was just a fun king moment, snaps a picture of him using this child as a human shield and takes off, fortunately, although he's chased down, but he gets away.
Yeah, this
And
fucking kid is like, when he met at the town hall, he was like, one day, I'm going to take a picture like the raising the flag at Iwo Jima. I'm going to be famous. And then in an interview, they ask him about this picture. He's like, yeah, it fucking kicks ass, right? This kid's an idiot, and I love him.
But the important thing is the human shield child is wearing a blue snowmobile suit with yellow piping. And that is our blue filter.
And Johnny has this moment where he's like, oh, that's what it is. I have to take the shot. If I don't do this, so many people are going to die.
But instead of shooting through a child, good thing he didn't do that, Johnny takes 2 bullets, drops the rifle, falls over the banister, breaking his back and both of his legs. And Sonny turns him over. Greg yells at them to go kick that guy's ass who took the photo. And Stilson remembers Johnny.
Oh, because you feel something too when Johnny touches you.
Yeah. As he's looking down at him, he remembers him. And Johnny reaches out and touches Stilson's ankle. And in that moment, before Stilson pulls away, he realizes that he's changed everything. How did that moment feel to you guys?
Really super sad because he's dead. I like Johnny and I didn't want him to die, and that he was willing to sacrifice everything to save people who will never understand or know.
This whole book's a goddamn bummer. Because the whole message of the book that I can figure out is that God is real and he doesn't give a shit about you. he's going, because
That was the premise of The Stand.
Well, yeah, Johnny, the whole book, he's on rails. He doesn't have free will. Everything that happens to him feels so determined already. And so when this happens, it's so sad because, like, as he thinks when this is happening, this isn't his fault. This shouldn't be his responsibility. Why him?
Well, think about what someone like Greg or Frank would do with that same power. Kind of going back to our talk about these three individuals having kind of a similar, in a way, experience that might have shaped them in similar ways, but it didn't. You know, he does have free will because he chooses to act on his visions for the greater good and put himself like way, way, way last. And either of those other guys, if they had that power, that would be a nightmare. They'd be supervillains.
That makes sense.
Yeah. I like that there's even, I'm trying to remember where it is, but he realizes that, you know, he easily could have died in that crash at the very beginning of this book. Every moment he's had is been borrowed time. So if he doesn't use that chance, just like his mom was telling him, if you don't use this chance that you shouldn't have gotten to make some real change, do something real, then it's a waste.
I really liked that line too, where he's acknowledging, saying, you know, I should have died and I didn't, and this is me fulfilling my purpose. It's weird because it makes his mom kind of a hero of the story retroactively for always believing in him, even though she's crazy.
Yeah, that's why the message of the book confuses me, because I guess the real heroes of the story are Johnny's mom, who was crazy, and Johnny, who tries to assassinate a person. Like, it's a weirdly
It's weird though because
holy war
he didn't
kind
want,
of message.
He didn't want to murder, and he didn't murder. I mean,
True.
he tried, but he failed. And the reason he decided on murder is because he thought about, okay, there's got to be some way that I can set this guy up. I can bring things to light. But then the FBI guy was murdered, and he realized if the FBI can't like set him up to fall, neither can I. So I have to murder. But he actually does what he would have preferred to do. He just dies in the process and almost compromises his ultimate moral value of not murder in the process as well. And I think that his mom can still be crazy, but can still be a hero too. She just takes her belief a little too far in some unhealthy directions.
Yeah.
So I almost see it as more of a positive message. You know, we're flawed, so even if we are in the right, we'll still fuck some stuff up.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
We conclude with part 3, which is Notes from the Dead Zone, which is we get excerpts from the letter that he dropped off in the mailbox to his dad and Chuck and Sarah. Meanwhile, also getting excerpts from the Stilson committee that's investigating this assassination. Sam Wyzak stands up for Johnny, saying that the tumor didn't pull the trigger. Johnny was in his right mind. He believed everything he wrote in the letters because the court has the letters. And we end things with Sarah visiting Johnny's grave, and they have this quiet moment, and before she leaves, she can feel Johnny's presence with her. And that's how we end the Dead Zone.
Man.
What'd you guys think of that, of ending with Sarah and Johnny?
I liked it because we kind of began with them. And in the meantime, she had another baby, and her life, not dream, but the vision, what she knew was going to happen with her life, marrying her husband, all of that has come to fruition. And I think it was a nice closure for me as the reader to have them together, that final moment closing the book. I liked it because I was rooting for them and lamenting what they never got the chance to have together. Oh man, should you have gone before me?
I just thought it was really cheesy. Her at his grave, the ghostly hand. I was like, okay, fine. That's fine, sure. And I thought it was really cheesy and kind of lame. But I do have to admit that on the second to last page that ends with her at the grave, and then she feels a hand drop on her shoulder, and then it cuts to something else. When the hand dropped on her shoulder, I did gasp out loud. I then felt really dumb about it.
Did you think she was getting pet cemeteried?
I guess. I was like, Frank Dodd, he's back.
I felt that it was sad for a different reason.
Oh.
It made me really sad at this moment to realize that this relationship with Sarah is probably the most valuable relationship he ever had with like a significant, like with a loved one. It just made me feel really sad that that's the closest he got to connecting to another person like that, finding his soulmate.
Josh, are you crying? Is that a single tear rolling down?
Yeah, so sad. All right, let's rate this thing, shall we? Ben, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. It was fine. I'm in a weird spot. Okay,
You started off loving it.
See, that's the thing. I'm in a weird spot because I remember reading this book and absolutely loving it. But the book I remember reading is not this book. I don't know why the parts I remembered this book being more action-packed, more of about the mystery, and it's not at all.
I'm so sorry to interject on your rating because we usually don't do that.
Not a problem.
But I understand completely because I also remembered it that way. So may I make a request?
Absolutely.
Can you rate this just the way you're rating it on this reading? Can you also rate it like from memory? How many?
Oh, sure.
Okay. I'm just curious.
The version of the book I remember that was about Johnny hunting Frank Dodd was easily 4 out of 5. And this book, still very good. It is just way more. You have to approach it as like a character-based book and not an action thriller. That being said, it gets real slow near the end, I thought, and some of the stuff is real anticlimactic. I'll give it respectable 3 out of 5 blue chambray shirts.
Not bad. Yeah, I feel you, Ben. I really do. This being my first time reading it, originally, I realized that this is a book that is so much better when you're explaining it to somebody. When you are running down the premise and the plot points of this book to someone else, the book sounds kick-ass. But there's some of those lulls. And at first I thought that this was the fact that I kind of went into this book not knowing anything, because I never look into the books before we do them if I haven't read them. And I was not expecting this book. I was not expecting a character piece, as Ben said. I wasn't expecting this book is this person's life like we got with Revival. I thought maybe that's what's hurting it in my overall feelings about it. But then I realized I didn't know that going into Revival either, and I loved that. So that tells me that the foreknowledge is not the problem here. Do I love all of these short stories and all these vignettes? Yes, they kick so much ass. But some of those parts are just the ups are really up there, but the downs are just too down and too long for me. So I'm gonna give this a 3 out of 5 blue chambray shirts.
When we started this, I thought we were all going to be 5 out of 5 here. We started off with so much excitement.
Yeah.
I mean, that's okay.
Rate with your heart, CM.
No, I feel so bad because I feel like I have nothing to add to it, what either of you said. And I can't really argue against what you said for a higher rating, although we know what I'm going to rate it because I did love it. It was a lot of fun. It had as many slow, low parts as any other King book or any other book I've read except for Annihilation.
Yeah.
And I love Johnny. I just love his character. And I guess it always goes back to this for me. It doesn't matter what happens in the book, how it's resolved. If it leaves me lingering in that universe and wanting more of those characters and opens up my imagination to what they might be doing, or if they had lived, or if this had happened, what they might do if we had another book. I love that a lot. so I'm going to give it 5 out of 5 blue chambray shirts. And that is it for this episode of Derry Public Radio. As always, thank you for listening. Join us next episode where we are going to be covering the movie The Dead Zone. For Joshua Kahn and Benjamin Graham, I'm Sam Alexander, reminding you, we all do what we can, and it has to be good enough. And if it isn't good enough, it has to do. Hey everyone, CM Alexander here. Thank you for listening to The Dead Zone, Part 2. We hope you enjoyed it. As always, please follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Derry Public Radio and Twitter at Derry Public. You can also send us an email of your thoughts, your ratings, requests at derrypublicradio@gmail.com. Don't forget to check out our Patreon at patreon.com/derrypublicradio for bonus episodes, and our Etsy shop at etsy.com/shop/derrypublicradio for other merchandise. That's all for now, listeners. Goodbye.